started thinking about this, and it's just like, are we putting too much into replacing? Are we devoting too much resources into replacing employees versus nourishing? So first thing I looked at is the cost of hiring. And this is widely available. You can just Google what are the costs of hiring, and you would see information such as this. Now, I got this information from SHRM. SHRM has all sorts of statistics on this, but as you can see, for entry-level employees, it's usually, somewhere between 30 to 50%, about 40% of their annual salary to replace them. Mid-level, about 150%. High-level specialized employees, about 200% of their annual salary. And this is also from what I remember. I used to be a VP of talent as well. These numbers haven't really changed too much, I would say, over the past decade, over the past 10, 15 years or so. So I don't think that really has moved that much. Correct me if I'm wrong. So for those of you who are listening in, does this kind of align with what you've heard and what you understand as well?
I would say, Jonathan, it absolutely does. Kind of what we're seeing. And even previously in a previous role that I worked in staffing, virtual staffing, this was something that was a common challenge for organizations who were trying to put into place, years ago, before virtual was a thing, virtual workers. And one of the things that we would often talk about was the cost of hiring and then being able to keep and retain these individuals. And the price, to your point, this 30 to 50%, that's huge. And then when you lose these folks, you're doing it all over again. So why not just do what you can to keep them?
Yeah. And to that point, Robin, so we now know that tenure is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So when I first entered the workforce, it wasn't uncommon for someone to work for the same company 20, 30, 40 years. I'm now hearing, now that we're recording this, I won't mention the company, but there was a recruiter that I know out in Silicon Valley, and she was telling me, oh yeah, we've got like average tenures, like 5 months, 6 months. It's like a revolving door. And sometimes we rehire the same people like 2 or 3 times. And wow. And each time they have to they go through the same interview process over and over again. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the variables that go into the cost of hiring. We're all, and welcome, Darlene. I see Darlene is here. Welcome. So we'd love to hear from y'all. What are some of the variables that go into hiring? What are some of the reasons why it might be so expensive?
The amount of time it takes to fill the position. So that means that there's somebody who's not doing that specific job while they're trying to find somebody to fill it.
Yeah, so there's also the loss of productivity there. Yeah. Yep. What else? What are some of the cost variables?
Darlene has put in the chat, completing a job assessment and knowing what competencies you need to today and the future. All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank God for cut and paste. So yeah, this is, I'll put this under the category of job requisitioning. When I was the VP of talent, I spent a lot of my time helping managers fill out the job requisitions. And to your point, Darlene, figuring out what the qualifications or competencies that they were looking for. Absolutely. What else? What are some of the other variables that you can think
the
of?
Tools and systems are used for, so business systems and tools or resources, you're paying for those. So whether you're subscribing to Indeed or any of the other platforms.
Yeah, Indeed. Well, Monster. Is Monster still around?
Yes.
Okay. You just don't hear about it as much.
They
Oh,
have
yeah,
a
Matt.
particular niche.
Yeah, so the Darlene had put in the manager time. Yeah,
Oh.
to interview and screen. Yeah.
Let's
And
say the team's time to interview and screen. Now people go through they go through 5 interviews these days. So it's like, it's not even just the manager. It's like, I don't even know how they coordinate with 5 interviews, 5-phase interviews anymore. That's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I have some shocking quotes that I'm going to share with you about that just blew my mind. Yes. So what else? What else?
How about if they make an offer, somebody accepts it, but then that person changes their mind and they have to start the process all over again?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I still think that's a made up rule. I would hate to be in talent acquisitions.
Yeah. Yeah, so possibility of the job offer being declined. Yeah, so you have to start all over again. All over again. Absolutely. Yeah, so I took the liberty, and this is a sheet that I've used before to capture hiring costs. And again, in my previous life, I started quantifying some of this stuff. And this was in the Southeast here. So the costs will not be that variable. So we already talked about this, the recruitment or interview team time. So this is not only HR, this is all the hiring managers. These are the additional staff that you would include. And I found that it was like 30% of the hired employee's salary, roughly, or upwards to 40% if it was an executive. So I just took a basic midpoint benchmark of 75K per year, if that's what you're hiring at. And so in my role at the time, it averaged out to be 22,500 approximately. So that's just the time. That's just the time that we put into it. And then if you outsource, so if you use an outside recruiter like a Russell Reynolds or any of the outside agencies, typically it's like 25% of their first year salary. So again, if we're talking about 75K, that's another 25K. And then as I think Neil had mentioned, the job posting fees, you've got the background checks, you've got the testing services. Now the tests are really increasing. Somebody had told me that they went through 4 different assessments, 4 different assessments before they were hired. Now, that to me seems like it's overkill, but
I heard they have a test now that determines whether or not if you're employable.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't, not surprised at all.
Mhm.
So there's the testing services, possible employee referral bonus, which at the time the company I was working for was $1,000. Relocation, which I found the relocation was like 5,500. That's on average. There's a lot of variables there because it depended, of course, where they're coming from and what level they were at. Job training at the time, and this was not too long ago. This was about 5-6 years ago. It was averaging about 1,300 just to get somebody upskilled to the point where they're productive. So it's first year training costs. Website, so we had to update the career page, and then stuff. That's desk, chair, phone, all the necessary stuff to keep the employee connected. So when I tabulate all this stuff and when I added all this stuff, it was $60,000. This is for a mid-level employee. So that number that I threw out, Robin, that we were talking about earlier, that 55K, that aligns with what I experienced again about 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago. So this, I think, I'm pretty confident about this number. So we're talking about approximately $60,000 just to hire somebody. So now it starts to get kind of interesting. And what I'd like you to do, please take a look at some of these quotes. This is just recently, I asked people for their recent hiring or interviewing experience. Check out some of these quotes. Hopefully you can read that okay. This last one is from a HR executive, by the way. What is this telling us? Now, this, by the way, these are just 3 samples. I received several. I received close to a dozen that were pretty much saying the same thing.
Sounds like no one knows what they're doing at the top. There's no strategy around onboarding or hiring in general.
Yeah.
This is a waste.
There was about 20 years ago for a school project. Class was called Performance Systems Analysis. We went into, and this is the state of Florida. So it's a state, and so I would expect that maybe in a governmental setting. I'm sorry to say that, but in a more corporate setting. But it took them, and they found that the people would get picked off. And but what I think the underlying tendency is, everybody was afraid to sign off. We went through every single little step, and I think they were afraid to sign off for whatever reason. It was the biggest fear.
Yeah.
Margie, I'll tell you, that's been my experience too. Very few managers were willing to say, you know what, 3 interviews, that's fine. If we can't make a decision at that point, we're incompetent, let's just move on. Very few people wanted to take on the full decision themselves, the accountability of bringing on that talent. Again, I've been hearing this so often now, but this, like, I was interviewed 14 times. Would you even want to work for a company that
I'm done after the second one. I promise you. It ain't no way. And then it's 3 to 4K each flight. Is that reimbursable? Like, first, who has 3 to 4K each flight just to be flying people around the US?
Now, Neil, in their defense, this was a higher level position.
I don't care. That's out of line. No.
This was an executive position. I agree with you though. Like 14 is
We're gonna do
certainly
4K times 14. Let's
It's-
3 different.
Now that, and this was the one that killed me too. It's just like,
That
okay,
blew me away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
what?
What?
Like, the
Insanity.
amount of money that they spent, and like a VP's time, a director's time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Mhm.
wait, hold on. Something's really off kilter here.
Wait,
Because this was, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
oh, no, I was going to say, you have to wonder if they just, was the position worth more? And that's why they were jumping all the hoops, but they didn't want to pay more. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's such a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Huge, yeah, huge
Mhm.
disconnect. That's what I'm picking up from this. Now, this last one, again, this is from an HR executive. This has been my experience. So back when I was doing hiring like 20 years ago, it was not like this. It was not like this. I mean, we did 3, maybe 5 interviews. You know, sometimes we do an assessment. You know, back in my day, it was the Wonderlic. A lot of companies use the Wonderlic. So, you know, maybe we would do that, but I mean, this whole idea of doing 10 interviews was like unheard of. So this seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, this seems to me like a very recent trend, like over the past 10 years that we've been really ballooning the amount. And Margie, to your comment, maybe not, nobody wants to take the accountability for a bad hire.
What's worse is now, as far as the trends go, has been that people don't want to stay with a company for more than 2 years. And, you know, when you talk about, I don't usually buy into the generational kind of thing. I think it's more of this kind of happens when you're in your 20s and this kind of happens when you're in 30s and that kind of thing. But what I have seen, and even because I did some career development courses, even 25 years ago when I took that, they were talking about people don't stay as long. It's even more pronounced now. So if this is going on the side of the company, and then you've got people that are only staying for 2 years, they're really not getting their return on investment.
Spot on. It's yeah. So just think, again, like tenure is shortening, so that's 60,000. I mean, you might be doling that out every year to replace a person. On top of that, like if people are becoming increasingly less willing to be accountable for a bad hire, then that 14 interviews may become commonplace. So I started looking at this and I said, like, there's got to be research out there. There's got to be data to say, at what point is it a zero return? At one point, does it just become silly? And actually, Google recently studied this. So Google, this is part of their people analytics team. They look to see, okay, is there a point where it just doesn't matter, like doing more interviews is just kind of a negative return? And they found that after 4 interviews, you're not going to get a different perspective or result. Oh, I'm sorry, Rhonda, I'm just reading your comment here. I wonder if it's because they did away with a 90-day probationary period. They're making people jump through more hoops, so it seems like they did their due diligence. Could be. Could be. I don't have a particular perspective on that. Most of the employers I know still have some form of 90-day probation or something like that. So I'm still seeing that as present. But what do you all think of this? And by the way, this is just one data point. I looked into this a little bit more, and there's an HBR article that basically said the same thing, that after 3 interviews, I mean, it's not going to skew either way. I mean, you've got 3 people who are, a yes, no. Well, that's not really going to change that much. That trend is going to continue, that person is most likely a good hire. And even if you look at this chart here, what the people analytics at Google found is like, okay, 3 interviews, you're 80% there already. I don't know if you all saw Rhonda's chat comment. Yeah, if you're 4 dates in and you can't figure it out.
I mean, essentially, Rhonda's correct in a way. The company, the employee or potential employees kind of dating the employer and then vice versa. Because there's that conversation about, is this the right fit? Is this the right person for the role? But also when it comes down to the employee, they're thinking like, is this the right fit for me, the company? And that has been an increase as well. People employer or employees or potential employees understanding and knowing their value as well.
Yeah. So it's a two-way street.
Now, I will say this: if you have more than one, it's a good indicator of the culture of your organization if you have a 14-step interview process.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I probably don't want to work for you.
Yeah, and that gets back to this comment that this individual made, and this is actually a friend of mine who basically said, look, what I learned from all this is that they're indecisive and they waste resources. That's what I learned. I don't want to work for that company. Another side comment that they had made is all of that money that they put into selecting me, which is part of my inspiration for this program, they could have given me more money. They could have invested that in like more tuition reimbursement or additional training. Yeah, so I think this kind of establishes what we all know, that after 4 interviews, I would dare say after 3 interviews, you should know. At that point, it's just diminished returns to continue to throw people or resources into the interviewing process. That, coupled with all the assessments that we hurl at people, and background checks, credit checks, whatever else we're doing, we should damn well know by that point. So the next data point that I was looking at is, all right, so $60,000 just to hire somebody. Okay, we're putting a lot of time and resources into that. Let me juxtapose that against how much money we're investing in employee development per year. Because we're talking about that great resignation. And I think we all know, ATD professionals here, I think we all know that, people want more training. They want more development. That's definitely a big part of the equation. So what do the statistics tell us? It's a sad story. It hasn't changed for over a decade. Over a decade, it's been about $1,200 on average per employee per year.
Why are they so scared?
They don't see the value. They don't see the value in training and development. They don't see the value in developing their people.
Now, I don't know about you all. When I saw this, it kind of broke my heart a little bit. I mean, I would expect to see, especially 2019, 2020, that was a bit of an aberration. This hasn't been updated, but look, that's relatively flat. It hasn't kept up with inflation, that's for dang sure. So I don't know. What are your reactions to this? Because I was kind of crestfallen when I saw this.
Just think about all the revenue leakage from all the employees that have left, but also from an employee standpoint, it's, when your employer provides you with training, or, hey, we want you to participate in this development program because we really think you're skilled here or something, it creates that stickiness, oh gosh, like they really value me, and I want to stay here because this is really interesting, and they see something in me that maybe I haven't seen in myself. So looking at this, it's just, it's like you're on a merry-go-round, and it just kind of, and there's so much turnover now that it's not surprising when you kind of look at these numbers and the lack of development that companies are investing their people.
Yeah.
No, there's an interesting note looking at this, and I posted something because I was kind of typing it away about during the 0809, and I know what company it was, a local company here, had an instructional design position posted for like 9 months. And I was like, oh my goodness, how long is it going to take? I mean, that means really getting in there and hustling to get up to get the end of year stuff. But notice how the year that has the most employee development. So we're thinking the recession 0809, but look at it, it was 2010. And so maybe that was at that point, which what's really sad is it's lower now than even 2010, but they were probably trying to attract people after the 0809 recession. That may have been part of it, but it's really pathetic that it's lower now. I think, especially like you said, the inflation, and now inflation's gone up. Well, that's before the pandemic, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
Or it ends at the point.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
My guess would be it would be lower because of COVID. I don't know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I'm not sure. However, I did speak to a couple HR folks, senior level HR folks, about, where has your spend gone? Has it gone, north or south during COVID? And they said, well, it hasn't changed that much, but the methods have changed, and also the population, the target population has changed. So the method has changed to, and again, this is only 4 people I spoke to about it. The method has changed to, of course, more virtual. And I think we all know that, right? So things have gone from the classroom to virtual. Also, the target, all 4 of them said the same thing. And these are senior level folks at large companies. They started putting more resources towards hypos, less towards line employees. And the rationale I heard from at least 2 of them was, well, you know what, the line employees, we're seeing a higher turnover. So why are we going to invest more money in them?
Plug the gap. You gotta plug the hole. You wanna.
Yes, Neil.
You just want to let all the talent leave, huh? You just wanted to.
That's just like, oh, my tire is leaking, so
I have
let
a
me
slow
let more
leak.
air out of it.
Yes.
It's,
Just don't worry about patching that. Just let it slowly leak. You know how much stress you're putting on your high potentials then? Because guess who's doing all the work? It's your hypos that are doing the work. They're actually overcompensating for the fact that there's a drain.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So much of this, and I hope you can see that this bothers me. So much of this seems like wasted time and resources in so many different ways. I mean, gosh, just put more time and resources into getting talent. We need to get that talent. We need to get, yeah, we'll kind of develop them when we get them in. Yeah, same level that we were before, but get them in and then they leave. And it's silly to me. So I myself, I'm going to be a little bit more or a lot more assertive and bold about stating this case. It just really bothers me. So when we think about it, and this is how I rendered it down. So take a look. So 50 times more. We spend 50 times more on hiring than we do on developing. That to me is not right. I would love to talk to any board of directors about it and say, like, is this seem right to you?
Would they do like can we just do a test for 1 year and just flip this right quick? Let's just 1 year and see if that,
Yeah.
like someone let me come in and just do a test. That's all I want to do. You know, you're wasting the money anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Let me come in and do a test.
Right.
Seriously,
They're
you
only
need to write up
staying
a
for-
proposal. Yeah, totally do that. Write up a proposal, approach some big company and say, let's just do this experiment for 1 year and see what the results are.
Y'all are experimenting anyway, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But well, here's the thing, and you know, I could see like 3 times more, 4 times more. Okay, I get that. Like I would understand that, but 50 times more is just it's borderline absurd. Absolutely borderline absurd, especially when we know, like, you know, it's the Great Resignation. What are we going to do? It's like it's right here. The solution's right here. So I want to now start talking about potential solutions. So instead of just kind of decrying the fact that we have this reality in front of us, I want to talk about what do we do then? And if we look at this hiring versus development, I think the solution is right there. And again, I'm happy to give you this, just if you could put in the chat your email, I'll be happy to send you the slide deck. So that way you have the resources. But there was a company called Burman that they looked at 6,000, they surveyed 6,000 employees. And these employees just revealed some of their basic frustrations. And I think we all know this, we're all in this space. You know, more than half said that they didn't really have little to no workplace training, and they were largely self-taught. They figured stuff out on their own. They consulted Dr. Google, right? They went to YouTube. Most people want to learn. Yeah, thank you, Margie and Robin. Neil, could you do me a favor and just capture those emails?
I got them.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, most people want to learn. That's the thing. We know that most people want to learn, especially young people. They want to be plugged into these programs. My gosh, it's just low-hanging fruit. and this just kills me. And this gets to your point, Rhonda, that you had mentioned. A lot of people just don't, it's just like, we're putting so much resources into like hypos, right? And, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't do that. But what I'm saying is, can we democratize this a little bit? Maybe there's a variable in there. So maybe it's a 1.25 versus a 1, whatever the multiple is, but let's democratize development a little bit more. Let's invest in people. I was just recently in Ireland, and I was talking to somebody that's in our space, L&D professional, and I just asked them how to the Irish culture, corporate culture, how do they approach training and development? And they said, well, basically we train everybody all the time, and we're constantly cross-skilling and upskilling, because we never know when things are going to change. That just seems smart to me. That's apparently part of the EU spirit too. Now, of course, we all know EU, they manage people very differently, and most people have like 2-year contracts and things like that. So it's very different. But my gosh, I think there's something to be learned there. Yeah. So we wonder why there's a great resignation going on, right?
So the Great Resignation is not happening any other place?
Oh, it's happening all over the place. He said they still have challenges too. Now, Northern Ireland is different than the rest of Ireland. So Northern Ireland is, they were part of Brexit, so now they're separate. They're seeing a mass exodus. They're seeing a huge Great Resignation, because a lot of employees want to still be part of the EU, and they want to be able to travel all throughout and work all throughout Europe. It's a bigger labor market. But in Southern Ireland, where they're still part of the EU, they're still happy. They're like, this is great. I can go work in Portugal. I can go work in Italy if I want to. So you still do have that, I can work in different places. It's a big labor market out there. They have a better work-life balance, and yeah, Margie, having a mandatory month off every year. Yeah. I'll take that.
I'll take it in a heartbeat.
So, again, talking about solutions now, and this is, Salesforce did a recent survey where they asked 600 learning and development professionals, knowledge workers, mostly knowledge workers. Actually, they weren't just L&D folks, they were folks from different sectors. What's their preferred development? What do they like? And I think we know the story, right? We already kind of know that, first off, people are going to remember information when they learn it on the job, when they can directly apply it to the job. And that's what this survey finds. They prefer on-the-job learning. So, give me a stretch assignment, give me a cross-functional assignment, something like that. Delegate something to me. And here, this is interesting, this last bar graph. I think we know this too, but I think it's helpful to be reminded. The large-scale trainings, the cohort-driven programs, as much as we like it, as much as we love, like, hey, let's get them into this cohort and they all kind of learn together. Well, especially the younger generations, they're not feeling that as much as small moments throughout the day. Because that's think about what they were raised with, right? Google, YouTube.
Oh, so even though that's true, they're still missing out. There are some social skills that they're missing out on that are needed for development at the higher up the ranks they go. So in order for them to become those high potentials, they need the skill sets that are developed in the large scale trainings, the interaction and the collaboration and the engagement.
It's a great call out, Neil. That's an excellent call out. And I think that is why supplementing the micro learnings and a lot of the things that Robin was talking about, supplementing that with coaching. You know, that as long as there's a coaching component to whatever it is, yeah, those things work together really well. 100%. The other thing was that, and again, this is no surprise to y'all, that most people, 74%, they felt that, you know, training and development had made them more productive. They were more engaged, they were happier, and surprise, surprise, they wanted to continue to work for the organization that developed them. Yes. So all of the reasons why we love what we do is because we know it makes an impact. Now, the challenge that I think that we still have is, you know, how do we get that across? How do we get that across? I mean, and there's a trajectory here, and how I was introduced to learning and development, and a little bit more about my background. So my father was a trainer in the Army, and he set up training centers, and he worked across branch. So he set up training centers for the Air Force, for the Navy. They've known about this stuff. They've known about this stuff since the 1920s. So they've known that if you continually train people, if you continually develop them, they feel good about themselves. It increases their confidence, it increases their competence, and also their loyalty to their division, to their branch, to their battalion. All of those things. And they also developed, so my dad was part of this Defense Department project called Training Within Industry. And training within industry was developed in the 1940s, 1950s, through to the 60s, and it later became Lean Six Sigma, the Toyota way, all that kind of stuff. So we've known since the 20s, reinforced in the 40s and the 50s, about all this stuff that I'm sharing with you. This is not new. Multiple data points validate all of this. Yeah, Rhonda mentions the law of reciprocity. Yeah, you're investing in me, I will invest in you. I will willingly work harder. I'll work longer and harder if I know that you care about me, that you're loyal to me. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to, instead of bemoaning all of this, I want to talk about the fact development doesn't need to be expensive, because I'm sure if you were to present this to any of your stakeholders, they might be like, oh, the cost. Time out. We are not talking about the big cohort driven programs. It doesn't have to be that way. And I'm sure you've all seen this before, the 7-20-10, this whole idea that most of what we learn is experiential. And also social, a little bit less. So it's about 20% social. And this is not a science, by the way. When I looked at the data to reinforce this model, it's very shaky. It's not very solid. So 70-20-10, I think somebody just came up with so they could write an HBR article. That's my guess. But still, I think most of us would agree that experiential learning is the most powerful, the most impactful. Yeah, social learning and informal learning. Now, we also do know, then this is actually from the military learned this very early on. It's much better to get the guys out at the rifle range actually shooting versus reading about shooting. The formal classes on marksmanship have to involve practice, and more practice. So we do know this. In the Air Force, very famously, during World War II, when they were hiring pilots, they realized that the traditional mode of classroom training, okay, pilots, so I want to show you a diagram that when wind is hitting a wing, this is how you should, that didn't work too well. And it caused a lot of people to lose their lives when they actually started training Air Force pilots during World War II out of Florida. A lot of people died. So they developed this really kind of wonky thing, which we all know today because we ride them in Universal Studios. If you've ridden any of those rides where you actually move a toggle and you feel the whole thing go sideways, and you feel it go this way. And then when you drop elevation, it drops too. So they developed all these really cool rides, basically, that simulated flight. And nowadays, of course, they have extremely sophisticated flight simulators. That is what we need to do. We need to do those job simulations, the coachings, the role plays, all those things that I think as professionals we know actually work. Yeah, Rhonda. I love Rhonda's comments here. Oh yeah, I can operate on your brain. I read about it in a book. Something that somebody shared with me is this, like, I'm learning how to dance salsa through YouTube. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. I think you're going to actually need to take a class on it.
Don't you need the other person?
Yeah, right. It's kind of difficult to do on your own watching a YouTube video. So what I would like us to do, I'm going to share with you, and let me plop this in the chat. Pardon me here while I get my chat. Bada bing. Here we go. Okay, so hopefully you can open that up. What I would like you to do is take a look at that assessment. And let me pull it up with you here. And this is something I do with clients often, is I'll just do a survey of, where are they? There we go. Where are they as far as their training and development? And I have an Excel spreadsheet version of this, but again, just shoot me since we have your email, I'll be able to send it to you. But what I'd like you to do is just take a look at this and consider either your organization or the clients that you work with. And, maybe just do a quick assessment. How much of the experiential stuff are they doing versus social versus formal? So just, take a quick look at that. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, looking at that assessment, really answer these 3 questions, and I'll pop them in the chat. So again, just take a look at that and just kind of answer to yourself those 3 questions. And then what I'd like you to do, is put you into breakout rooms where we can talk about these things. So we'll give you just about 5 minutes to think through those 3 questions. And I really would love to hear your answer to that 3rd one, because I would love to know any tools or tactics that you have. So let's just take just about 5 minutes for that. And then I'll plop you into some breakout rooms where we could talk about it.
And Jonathan, you said to just look in the experiential section or the whole, every section?
Oh yeah, look at every section.
Okay.
Yeah, for the first one, what type of development does your org or clients do they use right now? So look at everything and just be like, oh yeah, they do more of this, less of that. But for that second one, just focus a little bit more on the experiential stuff, because the experiential stuff, quite frankly, is the lowest cost. of all of them.
All right, thank
Mhm. And just give me a thumb up whenever you feel that you're ready. All right, we got one thumb. By the way, it's good to see you again, Margie.
Yeah, it's good seeing y'all, you and Neil.
All right, thumb, thumb, thumb. She'll have thumb, thumb, thumb till her day. Sorry. You might be able to tell from my background, I like music. Okay, so let me form some breakout rooms here. And what I'd like you to do just in the breakout rooms is, discuss your either your organization, if you're an employee, or your clients, and think about your clients. What did they do most of? And, that second one, what could they do that's more experiential? Because again, experiential, I think we all know that's the lower cost. It should be the lower cost because people are actually doing stuff. They're actually, being productive. And then, boy, the third one, please help me. Let's us all kind of band together. How can we make that case? What do you think are the best tactics that you could use to try and persuade the higher ups that, we should be doing more of the stuff and perhaps less of, the 20 interviews?